Hello and welcome back everybody, and for today's video we are having round 3 of SuperUnited Croatia Rapid 2024. We are having Vidit Gujrathi from India faced off with the lowest rated opponent Ivan Saric, so let's see how the game goes. So Ivan starts the game with knight to f3, we've got d5 from Vidit, we got g3 from Ivan, and now knight to c6. So Vidit plays a little bit of unknown setup here, so we've got d4 from Ivan, and now it's turning off into some sort of Catalan structure where this knight on c6, which is not beneficial for black. So Vidit continues with bishop to f5, now we've got c4 from Ivan, and now we've got e6 to defend the pawn on d5. We've got bishop to g2, continue the development, and now we've got knight to b4 going on for the fork on c2, also to attack the rook, and by the way the rook trapped on a1. So Ivan thought, okay, I will just castle, and now if you play knight 2 as black, it is actually good still for white, because now he can take on d5. The idea behind it that after you take on a1, he's going to take on e6, and after bishop to e6, now we will get knight to c3, and this knight on a1 is completely trapped. So Vidit cannot quite take the exchange on a1, so he didn't really play it, and he played knight to e7 instead. Now we've got knight to c3 from Ivan, and now Vidit goes for knight to c2, which is probably a little inaccuracy, so we need to know why and how Vidit got punished. So we've got c takes d5, e takes d5, and now pawn e4 from Ivan Saric, and e4 is such a great move. And now it's quite tricky position for this bishop, whether it will take with the bishop and allow this exchange to happen, but at the end of the variation, the knight is going to be hanging. Also at the same time, this knight is getting attacked. So what happens? We've got d takes e4, and now queen takes c2 played by Ivan. But it takes the knight on f3, and now queen takes f5 is a must-played move, and after f takes g2, Ivan goes rook to e1. Now he's spinning this bishop and at least making life hard for black, and now threatening knight to d5 as well. So we've got queen to d7 from Vidit, trying to exchange the queens, and if white trades the queens, then the black king runs out of the center. So Ivan refuses to trade the queens and plays queen to f3, now hitting the pawn on b7, but at the same time the pawn on g2. So we've got c6 defending the pawn on b7, and now there is an important rule in chess, which is to try to open up the center when your opponent's king is there. So Ivan here plays the best move correctly, which is pawn to d5 to try to open the lines on the center of the board. Also keep in mind that this knight will recapture on d5, and this knight has to stay on g8 to try to defend the bishop on e7. So now rook to d8 was played, and now bishop to g5 from Ivan. Now he is attacking the bishop, maybe d6 threat, and now we've got king to f8 from Vidit. Vidit is really trying to run away from this pen. d takes c6 was played, and now queen takes c6, trying to make some exchanges. So here Ivan traded on e7 first, knight takes e7, and now he sacrifices the queen and plays rook a to d1. Now the idea behind it is of course that if you take the queen, then rook takes rook is going to be a checkmate. So after rook to d1, it's quite a tricky position to defend for black. So Vidit plays rook to e8 to keep his knight defended and avoid that rook to d8. So here Ivan refuses to trade the queens once again and plays queen to f4, because as said before, it is important to keep the queens on the board. And now here we've got f6 from Vidit to try to maybe make a little loop for his king, to try to argue that his back rank is not weak. So we've got queen to b4. This queen is really trying to chase this king down on the board. And now we've got a5 from Vidit hitting the queen. Okay, Vidit is sacrificing a pawn here, and we've got queen takes a5 played in the game in fact. But okay, Vidit is arguing that okay, I will get my king away from this diagonal and try to Ivan at the end game, because I am the higher rated opponent. But will that will do the job or not? Let's just find out in just a second. So we've got knight to e4. Now the knight is ready to jump to d6. We've got the jump horse, and now we've got b6 from Vidit hitting the queen. We've got queen to h5 all the way to the other side of the board, delivering a check. This check has to be blocked with pawn to g6, and now queen to f3 was played, now putting pressure on the pawn on f6. but also at the same time threatening knight to d6, at the same time threatening rook to d6. So what is all of those threats? So knight to d5 was played. Of course, this prevents queen knight to d6 because now it's defended with the queen, and at the same time is defending the pawn on f6. So knight to d5 looks like a great move, but it hangs a really good move that Ivan plays here, which is queen to b3, now pinning this knight on the king and ready to try to make some exchanges, as now white is technically will be up a pawn at the endgame, since black has got 3 on the king side and 1, but white's got 2 and 3, so white's technically will be up a pawn after he captures this one. So we've got rook to e5 from Vidit. Vidit is really trying to hold on his position, but now we've got knight to c3 from Ivan. Ivan is trying to take advantage of this pin. We've got rook takes to e1 with check, rook takes e1, and now rook to d8 to try to defend his knight. And here it's really important to keep your advantage on as white and play rook to d1, even pinning the knight again with this rook on d8 right now, but at the same time it is still pinned through this diagonal. So king to e6 was played to try to hang on to his knight. Now king takes g2 was played. Of course, you cannot make a discover check because your knight is pinned, and I am trying to get my king on the center as well, since all of the pieces will be traded on d5. That's just a guaranteed trade. So we've got b5 from black. Black is really trying to run away from this bad position, and we've got knight takes d5, rook takes d5, and now even did not trade the rooks immediately, but instead he wins king to f3 first. He's trolling Vidit here, and yeah, at the same time, if black wastes a move here, then actually king to e4, this king march at the middle of the game with the queen and the rooks going on here is actually such a brilliant plan. So after king to f3 here, Vidit goes king to e5. Probably he could have played rook to e1, but the problem is after king to d6, then black consolidates his position, and the fact that your king is weak here as white is not good for white, and the position starts to shift a little bit to equal, and maybe black is the one who is better here because he's got some activity and some discover checks are upcoming. So here Ivan said, okay, let's just trade all of the pieces since I am up a pawn. And after king takes d5, he plays king to e3. Now king to c4 was played, and now the nice and little finisher, pawn to g4. Now the idea behind it is to try to play for f4 and try to fix those pawns, and maybe later on he could also play h4, h5, and since he is up a pawn on the queen side, this is just a guaranteed win. We've got h6 to try to delay him for a little bit, but after king to e4, Vidit here plays b4, and after h4, Vidit just resigns the game because it is completely lost for black. Like, black cannot, of course, enter with his king all the way there, and if black plays pawn to b3, then actually after this trade, then white is definitely winning by this h5 move, because the idea behind it that if you trade the pawns, now king to f5 and take this pawn, now king f5, and white is gonna grab this 2 pawns in fact and just win the game. And at the meantime, after h5, if he pushes g5, then after king to f5, the pawn on f6 is gonna be dropped, and white will win the game as well. So Ivan wins a nice game against one of the highest rated opponents. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Stay tuned for the upcoming videos. Make sure also to check round 2 and round 1. We provided really nice games over there. Make sure to check them out, and goodbye.